Alrighty, Jake here with TrendSpider. Happy Labor Day weekend, and let's jump into some FAANG charts. Just a quick reminder, we do have a 35% off sale going on, so make sure to check that out in the link below. Starting with Facebook, we did have a nice breakdown this week, which was really needed. I mean, this was a classic reset in price, and you can see here that we did not actually get down to this anchored VWAP from this July 24th low. However, we did break this previous area of resistance support. And you can see here on Friday there was a decent amount of volume near the top of the range, which suggests that there was some buying and buyers were in control near the top of the range. Now, if we look at this longer term chart, this is where it still gets a little ominous here. We are still way outside the monthly Bollinger Band on the weekly chart. This is something we've been really talking about on a lot of charts over the last couple weeks, and it's finally starting to materialize and a little sketchy going into the weeks ahead. We'll just have to see how this materializes. However, remember the Bollinger Bands are flexible. They can just move up with price, so that's something to keep in mind on the bull side of things. Now, one thing that I really want to go over is the raindrop charts, especially on Apple on Wednesday. So Wednesday, we did finally break out of this longer term area of resistance, and look what happens. We finally have a candle showing not a lot of volume at the top of the range. So if we zoom in here, you'll see that this raindrop was pretty much flat at the top here, which shows that there was no buyers, or there was no conviction by buyers absorbing supply above this resistance area. And then that was really the nail in the coffin here for the whole market, really showing that the buyers had really exhausted, and there was quite a move to the downside to come. Now, on the weekly chart, as we went over with Facebook, you can see that we're way overextended still. This is the weekly chart with the monthly Bollinger Bands overlaid. And you can see anytime we have had this kind of action before, there has been a bigger pullback over the next few weeks to months. We'll have to see if that's the case here, but we have had quite a run since this bottom. And at this point, really any news could make that continue down. We'll just have to see what happens. Going into Amazon, very similar kind of thing here. I did want to touch on the Alpha Trends anchored VWAP, and really kind of the opposite here, right? So if we look on the raindrops, there really was no volume below this anchored VWAP on Friday. You can see here that it was pretty much almost flat, almost exactly what we saw on Apple, except the opposite, around a support area instead of around an area of resistance. That means that there were not a lot of sellers here that really had to dump volume, because if there was, you would have seen a big bulge of volume here. But this is pretty much showing us that buyers were in control closer to the top of the range, and you can see how well this anchored VWAP ribbon, which was coined by Brian Shannon, the founder of Alpha Trends, just a really textbook case of this on Friday. Now, if we turn off multi-time frame analysis and try to get an idea of where we are on the weekly chart, you can see here that we really did have trouble breaking through this 2.618. We did break through it last week, but then really had some trouble this week, and that is not necessarily the prettiest candle I've ever seen. But we also had this candle here in July, and you can see what happened after that. It just continued to move up, and the speed at which this dropped just really screams to me more of a reset than anything. But we'll have to see what happens. That's not for me to decide, and my opinion doesn't matter in the market. We have to see what the market is going to tell us moving forward. Going on to Netflix, you can see here on Netflix, we pretty much moved right back down to where we started over the last week and a half. And if we anchor the volume by price, you can see this volume shelf has been in play for quite some time. We were anchoring the volume by price from this May 27th low. This previous area was acting as an area essentially as a base for price for the move up, and now as price broke down, it acted as an area of demand, or an area where sellers really dried up. Because remember, this big block of volume was holding at a decent profit up here, but as the price moved back down, all of these holders are back to break even, and they're likely no longer selling anymore. So that's what dries up the supply, and that's how the price can catch a bid at these volume shelves. Now, on the weekly chart, you can see here that we're really trying to figure out what we're doing here. However, if we do kind of turn on the monthly Bollinger Bands again, you'll see that we are kind of outside of this area. But notice what Netflix likes to do. It likes to do this. I mean, on the way up, this is not really uncommon. It's done this multiple times. So for me, it's hard to say that this is necessarily a red flag, but at the same time, as I mentioned before, that's not for me to decide. That's for the market to decide, and we'll just have to see what happens. However, we are a little bit outside the Bollinger Bands, but as I mentioned before, the Bollinger Bands are flexible. They can just move up with price, and then all of a sudden you're continuing the uptrend. So that is Netflix. Going into Google here, Google is the last one we'll go over. Same type of thing, right? We've got this really strong trend line here that acted as resistance once again. Classic fake out before the reversal, and we are below the above the monthly Bollinger Bands here. Remember, this is the weekly candle and then the monthly Bollinger Bands overlaid on top. And so will this be a reversal point? It has been in the past. That doesn't necessarily mean it will be in the future, but we'll have to just see how this plays out. Now, this is interesting. If you look at the volume by price here and we anchor it from here, notice that there's still quite a volume gap all the way down to this 1400 area. So the only thing that caught price today was this anchored VWAP from this capitulation candle before the reversal up. And remember, you generally want to anchor from these pivots before the next leg up. That's why you'll see these areas that we anchor from, and this is something that Brian Shannon really taught me. I never really really knew what an anchor was until he told me. I only knew what anchors were when dealing with boats, and now anchoring has really become a big part of my overall routine in the markets. Now, what's interesting is the last time that we had a blue raindrop on this anchored VWAP, it was a very strong move to the upside. Now, will that happen again? We'll have to see. But really cool to see that two blue raindrops have now formed on this Alpha Trends anchored VWAP, and really just a wild week and something that we really needed for the market to kind of reset. It's pretty classic for the market to have these resets, and then people realize that they have nowhere else to put their money again because interest rates are pretty much at zero. So people kind of start to rotate in, and we'll just have to see if that's the case into some of the travel and those types of things. We will go over something like Delta here. Notice Delta is actually moving up, or did not really have any type of movement here, and that's what's really making me think that this is really rotation. And someone that is an absolute master of this is JC Peretz. He really talks about rotation a lot, has taught me a lot about rotation, and it's really interesting to see that these did not get hit at all and that they actually held very well. So we'll have to see what happens here. If we do take off this multi-time frame analysis, you guys will see here that I do have this kind of cup and handle looking formation forming here. We'll have to see if that plays out. But all in all, crazy week. Hopefully everyone had a good one and have a happy Labor Day.